All right, everyone, we start off today talking about Desantis and how he has actually managed to fool elements of the left into admitting to the public that they support communism. Now, we know that like Vice News, Salon, some of these Huffington Post, a lot of the missing link media, number one, the House progressives, at least most of them, we know that they actually do support communism. Of course, being self-admittedly exactly the same as socialism from a Marxist standpoint. This is pointed out by the Socialist Party itself on Twitter, the British Socialists, which I find funny. Normally in general parlance today, they're differentiated. Socialists say, no, I'm not a commie, etc., etc. DeSantis, though, recently codified a new holiday there in Florida, the Victims of Communism Day, to, remember the Holodomor and so forth, to remember the 100 million or so that died over the last century roughly because of communism, under Mao, under Lenin, Pol Pot, the craziest, if not the highest overall kill count, and all of these other regimes, communists in Cuba, communists in other parts of certainly Central America. Now, first let me posit something. This is really shrewd, getting the leftoids to admit that they support communism. Part of it is self-serving from DeSantis. What does Florida have that no other state in the United States has? And this is, of course, where Ron DeSantis happens to be running for re-election. Cubans. Lots and lots of Cuban expats within Florida. Many hundreds of thousands, I think. In fact, there might be over 1 million. Huge Cuban community. Many of these individuals directly fled Castro. They directly fled Cuban communism. Now, I know the communists say, well, Cuba's not real communism. Here's why. Okay, it doesn't matter. They use the term communism. Now, link in the description, this is just from Vice News. This is only one of the outlets blasting this and rambling about don't say gay and stuff. They're saying, well, you can't even say gay in Florida, which is bullshit. That's not what the anti-grooming bill actually does. It talks about not giving explicit material to small children. Doesn't matter if it's gay or straight. They don't want you rambling about your gender identity. You're supposed to be teaching math or something. You're taxpayer funded, ergo there are certain things that as a government employee or quasi-employee you shouldn't be doing. So that bullshit part aside, then they follow up and say, but now they will be mandating that teachers talk shit about communism. Why wouldn't you want to talk shit about communism? You wouldn't be talking about it at all if you weren't, because there's nothing else to be said about it. Communism is bullshit. Just like socialism, it's stepping stone, infantile form, or the undifferentiated form if you use the antiquated term of socialism from over a century ago. DeSantis has effectively fooled them into alienating what I would consider to be the remnant minority of the Cuban community that would ever support anyone running against him, completely kneecapping the Democrats in the state of Florida. That's what he's accomplished. He's just confirmed that he'll be reelected effectively. If he was already ahead anyway, and he was by 5 to 10 points, this seals the deal. The left is now very stupidly blundering into this issue where they're pretending that remembering the victims of communism is a partisan issue. It's not. I think that they'll very quickly find that the fact that a small minority of the U.S. public happens to hold very far blue districts that vote for people like AOC or Ilhan Omar or Elizabeth Warren, that is a very small minority of the country. You'll remember, these leftoids in the last primaries got devastated. They got beaten out by a geriatric dude who stumbles around on stage, doesn't know where he is part of the time, didn't have high in-party enthusiasm. In fact, it's sub 50, in-party, to be clear, named Joe Biden. They got completely destroyed by him. I like how some people will say, well, Bernie Sanders got robbed of the primary nomination. He was doomed from the get-go. I told you that when the primaries began and both of them were in the ring, that it was effectively Joe Biden's to lose. He'd have to have had an even bigger blunder, apparently, to lose. That, again, a man with more baggage than almost anyone else in U.S. politics, known for corruption, ridiculed and panned even by some liberals, managed to absolutely destroy Bernie Sanders and Elizabeth Warren. Hell, by the end, Warren came in third in her own home state's primary. Bloomberg never could register a pulse. I know he's more of the corporate leftoid, but he does the id poll woke thing. Desantis has gotten them to reveal what they usually hide from the public. In private, leftoids will chant pro-Karl Marx shit. They'll wear the Che Guevara shirt and they think that it's fun. In public, when they're giving a news interview, when they're representing their views to constituents running for office, etc., they hold back. No, I'm not a communist. I don't like communism. It's got all sorts of problems. And no, I'm not really a socialist. I'm a social democrat. I'm a progressive. Now, of course, social democrat and progressive have nothing in common, really, with the modern-day leftoid movement. If you look at the progressive movement wasn't nearly as fixated on id poll with regards to anything other than, hey, workers' rights. Well, the left can't claim that anymore. They've been screwing workers for the last few years. No, the new wave populist movement on the ostensible right actually represents workers' interests. Hey, maybe we should take a leaf out of Bernie's book, back before he ran for office and sold out completely so he could buy a third home, when he said over and over again that if we didn't tackle the illegal immigration issue, wages would remain low. Maybe we'll take a leaf out of that book. Hey, haha, we're progressive now. DeSantis has completely fooled them. I think, though, in further analysis here, this is evidence that he doesn't have presidential ambitions. While this would look good on a national stage, it's really goddamn helpful if you're running in the state of Florida. He needs the Cuban vote. Now, Florida's been inching its way towards becoming a lean red state after having been sort of the mean, median, and mode of swing state status for 2 decades. It looks like the Democrats have managed to lose there, and part of that's going to be the Cuban community. Part of it is the Democrats have begun to alienate middle-class Hispanics all over the place, especially along the border with their pro-crime policies, their anti-border policies. That's really hurting people down there. And the fact that they want to hyper-regulate and overtax small businesses. When the lockdowns occurred, and they were disproportionately blue state heavy, most states had some degree of reaction when COVID first broke out, but about half the states repealed basically everything and certainly anything economically damaging within the first month or two. The states that persisted for the better part of a year and in some cases longer, up until Biden was elected generally, that was the cutoff for most of them. Blue states, Democrat-run states, well, they lost a disproportionate number of businesses. I remember in the state of Vermont, which I wasn't in at the time, but of course my family's in Vermont, I'm talking to them. In Rutland, for example, in the state of Vermont at large as well. All the businesses were shut down. Nothing was open. There was delivery only for certain things, effectively, and that's basically all that was there. Everyone just stayed at home and developed alcoholism for the most part. And small businesses started dying off. Why? Because the only place you could get food, the only food places that were available, a handful of aisles at places like Walmart. The big box stores, they allowed to stay up in brownout mode. Thus, completely lopsiding supply and demand, causing part of the present economic crisis. Of course, inflation inching down, point 2. This is considered a major economic victory by Biden's wagon circlers. They're proclaiming peak inflation is here. I have a feeling that next month they'll be singing a different tune. I think this is the reverse of a bump in the road. I think the road is mostly bumps, and this happens to be the one little patch that was paved more recently by the government work crew. I don't think things are going to be getting better anytime soon, especially when the housing bubble bursts, and the student loan bubble, and we end up in a goddamn depression, potentially, just so people are aware. I'll be reporting on the baby formula shortage as well. I mean, everything that can go wrong is going wrong right now. You can't even find baby formula for women in the United States. It's still thankfully available here. That won't last very long if the U.S. decides to allow European imports. They probably will, so since we have an infant daughter, of course, it's good to have a little bit of extra on hand. Also, like when people are saying, well, just breastfeed. Well, if the woman has not breastfed for the first month or so, that ship sails. Some women can't. Well, what about women with AIDS or something like that? I don't think that's the smartest option in the world. That's some sort of blood-transmitted disease that they can't get rid of. DeSantis has pulled a genius move here. especially if you analyze it from the perspective of DeSantis expects Trump to run, and he's setting the stage for a very popular gubernatorial continuance, and then later on running. And I think that he will. DeSantis has definitely got all of the cards in his favor for like a 2028 run. He's got the age. He'd be at the perfect age range for a young-ish president by 2028. He'd have probably Trump's endorsement at that point because, you know, they seem to get along reasonably well. Important state, incumbency. That is that you're from a state that's technically in play. If you're from a state where it's more than 10, 15 points in one direction or the other, it doesn't matter. It's like Trump was from New York, so it doesn't help him win New York because it's just so blue. If he had been from Arizona or something, yeah, could play a role, definitely. Of course, they're both Floridians now. I also like it when people say DeSantis would be VP. I don't think that he would want to play second fiddle to someone who really does like the limelight like Trump and likes to side stage everyone else. Don't think so. I think this is him continuing his success streak in Florida. The idea that this somehow ties in with the anti-grooming bill is a mysterious conjecture. And you've got elements of the leftoid media now, for the first time, being very public and admitting that they support communism. Oh no, how dare you talk shit about this. By the way, did you see Geraldo Rivera's reaction? That was hilarious. Well, why don't we just have a Victims of Intolerance Day? People would be shitting their pants if you came out and said that all of the other technically identity, politically, socio-politically, ethnically related Remembrance Days should be gone. So you're arguing for, not remembering the 6 million, Geraldo? No, you'd be shitting your fucking pants if you ever suggested that. You'd be like Cosmo Kramer. You'd be coming out making a lot of apologies. Believe it or not, leftoids and neocons, communism is extremely unpopular. The problem is that it's being implemented, especially in an educational context with critical race theory and things like that, under your friggin' noses. They're just not using the term communism. Oh, hey, I've got a novel idea. We'll teach Marxist mathematics and history, but we'll use the term racial justice. Just don't mention Marx and the fact that he influenced the people who designed the curriculum. That's about all. Peace out.